Thank you, Nick. I'm Danny Misek, our Director of Technology and Strategy, and I'm excited to have Richard Ogawa, our President and CEO of Gardenland. So Richard, before we get going, why don't you talk to us a little bit about yourself, your dealership, and the products you sell?
Sure. Thank you, guys. I'm glad to be here. I'm actually really excited to be here because of all the changes that are kind of going on in California, and I just want to put a disclaimer out there that I'm 100% CARB compliant. I am Prop 19 certified, and I identify as a gas user, right? So I tell you, it's if you guys think you got things to worry about, thank you very much. If you guys think you have things to worry about and you're wondering whether or not I could survive as a dealership, come to California. I mean, my God, everything that will get thrown at you every day, it's a new regulation. It's just absolutely crazy. But if I can do it, you guys can do it, guaranteed. So I'm happy to share. Gardenland's been around since 1960. It's a second generation business. I grew up in the business as a little kid. My dad would hide me in the back as an 11-year-old wrenching so that he doesn't get any child labor laws on him. So I grew up in the business, and then I got out of high school and went to college. I swear to God, I would never be back in this business. And sure enough, 20 years later, I ended up taking over the business. In the last 6 years, we've grown it from a $2.5 million business to now almost 12 million. So.
Fantastic. So you're at the forefront of this innovation in this industry. We look at macro trends in the market for quieter outdoor power equipment, zero emissions, and then obviously legislation, right? So California is at the forefront of this legislation, but it's taking place all across the country. How has this transition from gas to battery impacted you and your business?
So one of the first things that we really saw, and it really started to accumulate over a 5-year period of time, is that as we got more and more battery and our growth was happening, because we had cities and things mandating that happen, so we naturally had a growth in battery. The problem with us with battery is the percent of revenue that battery contributed would start going up, but the percentage of gross margin profit would go down. Right? So we had this really like this inverse curve thing going on, and it was scaring me to death. So in 5 years, battery is now 30% of my business, but it represents 22% of my profit. So if you look at that, it's an 8-point spread, right? 5 years ago, battery was about 15% of my business, and it was probably 12% of my profit. There was only a 3% gap. So you guys say, what's the difference, right? And today, the difference is when you get battery stuff, there's less maintenance. Right, and repairs. So you're not replacing belts, you're not replacing pulleys, you're not replacing oils, you're not replacing hydraulic parts. So our part business started to drop, and that was our highest margin category. The other area that dropped was service, right? So you have to learn, and you've got to challenge your manufacturers, is that we got to make more profit up front in battery, period, right? And if it's a low margin business from the beginning, it's going to be even worse as you progress and grow that part of your business, because your parts business is going to go down and your service businesses go down. So we've clearly seen that. So that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we've had to face as we transitioned into battery.
Well, speaking of price, and how have you positioned the cost of battery versus gas?
So typically what I'm seeing out there is gas products, when you're converting, there's a 2 to 4x multiple, right? So if you have a $400 trimmer, it's gonna be roughly $800 when you convert it to a battery product. Same thing on the blower. If it's a $500 blower, it's probably going to be about $2,000 to $2,200 blower. So the curve of getting over that is really hard, right? So the main thing for us was trying to educate our customer that the people don't realize how much they spend on gas and how much they spend on maintenance. And once you educate your customer about how much time do you spend actually filling this up with gas and how much gas do you use, how much time does it take you to get your guys to go to the gas station, fill up? If you start taking all of that into account, and you think of all the repair work that you have to maintenance if they don't mix the fuel correctly, right? If you start quantifying that for them and they start seeing that the monthly savings that you can get will eventually cover the initial high cost of getting into the business. The other thing you can try is, and one thing that we've tried is, we tried to bring that initial cost investment down by saying, all right, if you pay $400 for $500 for a gas blower, you can pay $500 now and replace it with this backpack battery system for $500, and then we're going to lease it to you for $50 a month. right? And then they say, well, you're going to spend 50 to 100 bucks a month anyways in gas and maintenance. So if you get them in that thought process and they understand now, hey, I'm already burning this cost, right? They start seeing the ROI quicker, right? And typically what you'll find in a battery model is a 9 to 12 month ROI, you know, if you really calculate it out. Riders are another perfect example. Those cost about $1,100 to $1,500 a month just to maintain the gas and the fuel and the maintenance. And if you say, hey, instead of buying this $35,000 ZTR, you can now buy for $15,000, which is what you'd pay for gas, and we're going to charge you $1,000 a month for the battery subscription, which is what you normally pay on the maintenance side. So reframe your concept with your customers, that they understand that, yeah, there's a lot of high costs up front, but the savings that you get in service, less maintenance, and the fact of the matter is, a lot of us, how many of us need techs still, right? They're really hard to find, right? So if you can get people now that are trained in a different skill that it can adopt much quicker if they learn the education of how to diagnose, that you can turn your shop around by kind of changing your business because you're not going to be 6 weeks behind all the time because you're backed up with jobs.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Right. And you know, you talked about price being this concern. Yeah. You know, last night you and I were talking, and you mentioned your trick to getting people in, and I'm fascinated by this, is when they bring a gas product in for service, you actually give them a battery loaner just to try and get them by. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so look, the best thing to do is get a product in their hands, right? And you know, it's whenever someone brings in a ZTR, for example, we say, hey, take this battery ZTR, you can take it until we get the job. Most of us are backed up in the shop anyways, and if you loan out another gas product, it comes back, you got to repair that. So now you're in this vicious cycle, right? With the battery stuff, it's really pretty maintenance free, right? You can lend it to them, they can try it. And then you get over these hurdles of, this will never be better than my gas. This will never be more powerful than my gas. The story is, don't try to sell it that way. This is just another tool in your toolbox, right? When you tell them, this isn't to compete with your gas, you're gonna get an opportunity where you can be different now, right? Where you can start jobs an hour earlier because it's quieter, right? During COVID, all the HOAs were, everyone's staying at home and working at home, they're complaining about the noise, right? Now this is a perfect opportunity for you to give your landscaper battery tools that they can start in the HOA, start an hour earlier, work an hour later, just because they have this quieter solution, right? So really just try to pitch it as another adjunct to your tool, right? And I'll tell you, what we did on our handheld blowers is for every handheld gas blower we had, we put a battery one right next to it. And I guarantee you, if they got that battery handheld blower, there's really no use for a gas handheld blower. Really isn't. I mean, that tool, and there's certain tools like that a gas product versus a electric product, there's no comparison. You don't have to deal with the carb issues. You don't have to deal with clogged up mufflers because they mix the fuel wrong, right? And it's simply that once you get to that battery blower, you'll never go back to gas. And there are other tools like that as well. Hedge trimmers, for example, line trimmers. Plenty of power, plenty of run time. Yeah. There's really no reason that it can't perform like a gas.
So you get them in, they take the products, and what's the feedback you're getting from end users?
Most cases, they're like, wow, this thing has a lot of power. You know, they don't really realize it. And then they realize, man, this is just convenient because I can pull it out whenever I want and just fire it up, right?
Yep.
The perfect example is like, I have customers that come in and says, I got to have this, but my wife's got to be able to start it, right? And literally, now that they have their battery blower, they never have that problem. And then they find all kinds of other uses for their blower, right? Now all of a sudden, they're blowing inside their garage. They're blowing stuff out of their car. All the places that you can't use gas, you can now use your battery blower. And so then it starts then getting them accepted to the platform, and then they're used to the power, and they see that the power consumption's there, and then they kind of demystifies that runtime issue.
Yep.
Right? They start realizing, hey, it really does have enough runtime to do the job.
Yep. So that takes care of the sale of the product. And when we look at servicing these products, battery and electric is new, right? And it's different from the legacy gas, you know, service and maintenance, belts and pulleys. Yeah. How have you gone about, you know, training and educating your service department to work on these products?
Yeah, it's interesting. My service department was always, I'm not interested in battery because it's going to take my job away, right? And we finally taught them that, hey, you've got to have a different perspective on what this means. Now you can focus your time for all the handheld stuff that we'd normally be repairing, they now can focus on the big riders, right? And now they're literally like, as we get more and more handheld stuff that we're selling as battery, most of the time now we can focus on the big riders and these things that bring more profit, more revenue into the shop, right? And so we've seen a huge kind of conversion shift in our service business, and we're really targeting more of the commercial base and trying to get more of the rider service, and then letting the handheld business really be taken care of with the battery.
Okay, so that handles sales and service. So I've had the opportunity to be to Gardenland, and Richard's got batteries everywhere. He actually just got done building a whole separate area in his shop for battery ride-out and a whole new sales floor. So when we look at battery storage and battery transportation with the OEM, have you had to do anything different to your shop to get ready for this?
Yeah, I actually think this is the biggest gap today. A lot of manufacturers in the battery side have really pushed and said, hey, this battery, but no one's really given a really good program on what to do with batteries and how to recycle them, how to repurpose them. It's a huge gap. And it's one of the challenges I'd push back to you dealers to say, look, manufacturer, find a partner that can give you the complete solution, right? And that means from the product support to the product training, but also to the replenishment, the recycling parts of it. It's one thing to be able to ship a small handheld battery. It's a totally another thing when you got a huge battery pack sitting inside a ZTR, right? And today that's a big gap. I've got 10-year-old ZTRs that are now at my shop, and we have no way to kind of repurpose it. Even ship it to transport high capacity batteries is very challenging. So I think that is a very big miss that really has to be addressed by the manufacturer.
Yeah, and I think that's something that us as Stanley Black & Decker, as we increasingly go more electric with our brands, with Hustler, with DeWalt, with Cub Cadet, we can probably get better at too and take that back and really support our dealers for when they're ready to go electric.
Yeah.
So one last question before we wrap up. We got a whole room full of dealers here who have either gone electric, they're maybe dipping their toe in, or they're just thinking about it. What advice do you have for the room here?
Just get started, right? Like, try to create a different solution for your customers, right? And the Try Me program that I talked about, like, it's really easy. It's like the guy brings in a line trimmer for repair, hand him a battery one, let him try it, right? That's so simple. You don't have to find anything, and you'll be surprised how many people you convert, right? I think the definition, you guys probably heard this, of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. Will be different. Change it up a little bit, right? And I think that if you embrace it, you're going to see a world of difference. I'll give you one perfect example for us is True Fuel. Does anybody know what True Fuel is, or engineered fuel? Right? So again, we started selling that, and we couldn't sell 1 quart because it was like $8 a quart, right? It's $24 a gallon, right? So we're like, how come we can't do this? I mean, we can't sell. So what we did was, every time someone brought in a piece of equipment for a carb-related problem, which is like probably 75 or 80% of the problems, is all fuel-related, we would service it with True Fuel, put a sticker on the unit saying, serviced by True Fuel, and we gave them half the can, right? And that became so convenient for a lot of homeowners that they started buying 6-packs, right? Now they're starting to buy gallons. Now they're paying $24, $25 a gallon compared to $3.50 a gallon, and it's because of pure convenience of the product, right? And now all of a sudden the commercial guys, all our tree care companies now, they're all buying drums from us, 55-gallon drums, because now they use True Fuel and it saves the life of their equipment, because half their guys don't mix the fuel right? And all the issues with clogged spark arresters, over oiling them, not enough oil and burning the cylinders, all those issues went away. So now we're literally selling drums of True Fuel, and I'm happy to tell you that this year alone, we'll do $350,000 in True Fuel, and it's at a 50% margin, right? Like, how many people wouldn't like to have that added to their bottom line, right? That's a full-time tech, right, that you can have in your business. So, just get started. Try something simple. Start with basic tools like a hedge trimmer or a handheld blower, right? 1 or 2 tools that are very convertible to battery. And once you get them in the platform to try things, it changes the game for you.
Yeah, it's just another tool in the toolbox.
Another tool in the toolbox.
No, that's a great message.
Right.
So we're going to wrap up here, but Richard will be available for questions after this session. And thank you so much, Richard. It was a pleasure having you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Nick.
All right. Thanks for having me.